Good morning. Welcome to Unity Spiritual Center, Pflugerville on the first Sunday of February. Thank you so much for being with us. Ready?
Yes, ma'am. First, thank you. That was delightful. And good morning. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Bruce. And Larry, too. Thank you so much for your beginning. I did have a quick announcement. You need to know, those of you that are members of the church, and we're hoping all of you to make that decision to become members of our church. Every year, the bylaws call for a reaffirmation of your membership. So we need to know that you want to be with us for this next year. So it's easy to do. All you have to do is call the church at area code 512-323-6688 or email us unity@unitypflugerville.org and say, I'm a member of the church and I wish to continue doing that. We've heard from 4 or 5 of you, but we would like to make sure we get that done before our annual meeting on the 21st of February. So we got that business out of the way. Our topic this morning is kind of like a rerun of what we did last week. And the idea is returning to our higher self and returning to our natural self, returning to who we really are, returning to the Garden of Eden, returning to heaven, whatever you wish to say. We could say returning to nirvana, returning to the kingdom of within. It's all metaphors for the same thing. And what I'm finding out is that we have a natural self. And that natural self is who we really are. And that natural self has everything already figured out for us. We don't have to do anything. The natural self automatically takes care of us and makes sure that we're loved and appreciated and makes sure that we have everything we need to exist comfortably in life. And the problem is we don't see that. We don't understand that. So if you really look at the universe, and the universe is, I go back to this over and over again. We know 100 years from now what time the sun is going to go up. They can tell us the tides down on the coast. We know that it takes 9 months for the gestation of a human being. There's cycles everywhere and everything has its natural flow. And yet the only thing that we as human beings know is that we toil and struggle from day to day, which certainly isn't our natural self. And it's like, I keep talking, I know, about the same thing over and over again, but it's so simple. Everybody's looking for happiness. It's interesting that when they do surveys, happiness is the biggest issue. And how do I be happy? How do I feel comfortable with who I am? How do I feel that I am important? How do I feel and be happy that I am who I am? And actually that's part of who we are in our natural self. So something has to be taking us away from our natural self. So the idea here is this. And we talk about the kingdom of heaven, we talk about the peace of God, we talk about all these wonderful sounding words, but the issue is, what are we doing about it? How are we practicing it? How are we learning to be part of it? So the conversation this morning is that we are two people. We are the natural self, the higher self, the God self, the Christ self. And then on the other side, we are the conditioned self, the ego self, the material self, the body that we see. And in the Bible, when it says in Genesis 1:27, and God saw everything he created and said it was good. And we are created as a spiritual self. Here's the key. We are, all of us are an energy. We are a frequency and an energy that's vibrating at a certain frequency. And everything we need is in a frequency. Everybody there? So we know, science tells us that everything is a frequency. We know that everything's at a rate of vibration. Everything has its own personal frequency. And we are a frequency at our base. So deep within us, we are a frequency of perfection. So we already have all the frequencies we need to live a happy, successful life. So the question becomes, in my existence now, how do I live a life of joy? How do I live a life of peace? How do I live a life of abundance? How do I live a life of comfort? How do I live all these lives? And you ready? It's already there. The perfect pattern is already in us in a frequency. Everybody there? So, you are a frequency we call spirit. And that spirit we might call the Christ. We might call it the God within you. We might call it who you really are, your natural self, your higher self. So, how come we're not resonating at that frequency so that everything works for me in my life? And the question is, there must be another frequency that is disrupting it and distorting it and changing it so it comes out in a different way. I don't know how to paint it for you, and I know I'm talking to the choir, but the choir gets lost sometimes and goes off key. Because I do, I know. And it's interesting, it really is, because we think we're really working. We think we're really struggling. We think we're really fighting the fight. Did you hear those words? Now, it's interesting. I got an email this morning, and I shared this earlier with a couple of folks. And John Mundy publishes a newsletter. He's a Course in Miracles guru, if you will. And he's got a quote from the Course in Miracles in there that said, the ego always needs an enemy. The ego, the material, the body part of us always needs something to fight against. And it makes up stories and it makes up egos for something to fight against. So here's my natural self over here, this frequency that I am of love and joy and peace. And then the frequency of enemy comes in over here. And we are constantly making this choice between the kingdom of heaven within and the ego. Now, it sounds like it's rather simple. Problem is, we've been so ingrained and so conditioned over here in the body that we don't remember that we got this over here. So that's part of what we're going to talk about this morning, is looking at that energy. And here's the key. I'm going to go back to it again. You have a natural self of joy, peace, abundance, health, happiness, relationships, and all the wonderful things in life. That's who you are. That's the Christ that you are. That's the human being that was created at the creation way back in Genesis, however time ago. And over a period of years, thousands and thousands and thousands of years, that energy has been slowly chipped apart. And it's been slowly influenced by the body and the world around us. Those of you that know, it takes time to change consciousness. It's like a drip, 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 drip. The Grand Canyon, if you've ever been there to visit the Grand Canyon, it's a mile deep. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. And there's this huge, huge rift in the face of the earth. And that has occurred because the Colorado River slowly wore away rock, foot after foot after foot over the centuries, and now we have this huge canyon on the face of the earth. The same thing, if I can use the same metaphor, has occurred within our consciousness. Now, the idea of consciousness is this. Consciousness is my outlook on life, what I believe combined. And my consciousness is what creates the world around me. So as my consciousness acts within me, and I react to things as they come in, I am creating my world around me. Science is pretty well determined and gotten into this idea that we live in the world of our own creation. And the problem is, we look at it and we say, no, I didn't create that jerky thing, or I didn't want that, and here we are. So we deny it by saying, no, not me. So we actually cement it more and more. Because the old idea of that which we resist persists. So, by the way, hang on to that because we're going to go back to it. So, we are a spirit. We are, the fancy word is incorporeal, without body, without corporeal. And we are that entity, spiritual being, living in a physical body. And we're living in the physical body to experience the physical world around us. We're evidently on a journey here to get used to the physical body and learn how to operate in the physical world. Now, why and how, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out what is it someday in the sweet by and by. But right now it doesn't matter because here I am, I'm a spirit, and the body is running me rather than my spirit. So, here's the idea, I'm going to go back to this again. The spiritual self is the creation of God. And everything in it, and its frequency, its vibration. Okay? The body, the material world, has been created over spans of thousands of years to where it is by the material world, the physical body. So the physical body has actually taken over and is running us. And all the beliefs have been installed by the physical world. And we don't realize it. We do not realize that we are constantly making choices about what we see, hear, and think. And what the act of creation is, I have an idea, a thought, I dwell on the thought becomes slowly into materialization, and then the materialization shows up in form around in my world. So an idea comes in, thought occurs, thought creates, and it manifests in our world. Now, consciousness, it doesn't, in other words, if I think of a book, the book doesn't automatically materialize. Maybe I've reached a certain consciousness. But there's a consciousness that occurs over a period of time. So if you understand that, it's sort of like we get an average of all our thoughts over the period of time that we're in body. So, consciousness, again, is how we look at the world, what we expect from the world, and what type of world we're thinking we live in. Our world is energy, and we are creating the world we live in by the consciousness we have created. And we have a choice. We can go spiritual, or we can go ego world conversations. And we pretty much developed a lot of that last week. But I'm going to go back and redo this and say, how do we live in a world of peace, joy, happiness, and love? Now, Valerie started off way back in the conversation really about what their class was this morning. And the question is, how do we live in a world of love, peace, joy, harmony, and abundance and gratitude, and experience that in our lives? And it's by learning to control or learning to create a consciousness that creates those things. And it's learning to listen to voices in our head, and it's learning to start controlling our mind. Now, I don't want to get off into mind control, that's where I was stuck for years. But I want to talk about consciousness. Matthew 5:37. It's one of those verses that has confused me for years. And I'll share that with you. And Matthew 5:37, which is the beginning or the part of the Sermon on the Mount. And here it is. Matthew 5:37. It says, "But let your words be yes, yes, and no, no, for anything which adds to these is a deception." The New Standard Revised Version says, "is of the evil one." So here's the idea. A thought comes in and I entertain it. I say yes, yes to it. If it's a divine thought, if it's a thought of love, peace, joy, and happiness, I allow it to stay and I agree with it. If it's a thought that is over on the other side of the ego, which is anything that's anger, anything that's hate, anything that's retribution, anything that's lack, anything that's fear, anything that's in that venue, I say no to it. And anything other than that I entertain is of the evil one sneaking around us trying to get in the back door. One of the famous parts of Jesus' life is when he went into the desert, or he went apart is what it says, and he was tempted by Satan. And he said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." Now, Satan is another conversation, in my opinion, for the ego mind, for the subconscious negative part of who we are. And I'm going to take that a little bit further, because it says in another place, the wages of sin is death. And we have determined or gotten the idea in the translation from the original King James Version that the word sin meant error, missing the mark. So the wages of error thought is death. I'm going to say it again. The wages of error thought is death. Now, it doesn't mean death, everybody with me, for the physical body, for the spiritual part of you, but it definitely means death to the material part, which means in the spiritual self. In other words, my spiritual self cannot know the evil part. So when I'm dwelling in that ego thought, when I'm in that conversation, I'm actually dying to my spiritual self. So if I want the gifts of spirit, the joy, the happiness, the abundance, the peace, I have to stay in the conversation with those words. I have to stay in the conversation with those thoughts. And when I come over here into the ego thoughts, what's happening to me is I'm creating a slow death of who I am at my root as a child of God. Fascinating idea. And if you put those two ideas together, one idea is say yes, yes, and no, no. And understand that if I stay over here in dwelling on what the world is telling me is wrong, I'm actually slowly dying in my spiritual self. So the kingdom of heaven is within. Everything we need is already there. Your natural self wants to take over, but we've allowed the conversation of the ego mind to distort the promises and the energies and frequencies of the spiritual self, the higher self, the normal self, the kingdom of heaven within. And it's a constant battle. It happens all the time. And we have certain tools. Part of the tools, one of the major tools we talk about is meditation. One of the reasons for meditation is changing the state of being. Generally, the mind goes 100 miles an hour. Anybody agree? I mean, when I first started learning to meditate, which I still am learning, by the way, I would sit down and my mind's going 100 miles an hour. 5 minutes later, I wonder, is it over yet? Okay, so it takes time to learn the tools. It takes time to become different. It becomes time to be, and I don't like the word enlightened, but to become aware that there's another part of me. It takes time to understand that the world's conversation is not here to support me, it's here to scare me. Just like John Mundy shared with me this morning, it's the ego's job to create an enemy. So I am the one that's allowing the enemy to be created when I entertain those ideas. So there's that constant choice between the two energies, if I can use that terminology. And the world presents us problem after problem after problem. Right now we've got, health issues. We've got economic issues. We've got relationship issues because we're around each other so much. All those problems come out. We got boredom issues. We got all these issues. And it's here's the key. It's a perfect storm that's allowing us to understand that those are the things we have to clear out in our life. So it's a blessing to be where we are now. Isn't that unique? Madeline actually in my household, they're tired of me saying that. Because I keep turning it around and they want to go barf. But it's true. Because that which we resist gets bigger. Okay? So it's a time for looking at, what am I dealing with? What problems have I got in my life? And what do I have to be thankful for that I'm finally looking at who I really am and what's holding me back? There's an endless amount of resources available to us. In your natural self, you are connected to the universal energy, the energy that has created the universe. So you have unlimited power, unlimited love, and unlimited resources available to us. Now the world tells us no, because it'll say, it's like, I'm going to give you an example. Our church, we need, Randy and I have been talking, and we're going to upgrade it. So we talked originally 1.2 million. We're going to go to 1.5 million, okay? Because we've got those extra things we want to do. And the first word is, oh my God, where are we going to come up with $1.5 million? That's impossible. Okay, world, no. The kingdom of heaven is within. I have access to the resources of the universe through my connection with all that is. Famous affirmation, if I can share it with you, is, my connection with infinite intelligence is adequate enough to provide us all with an abundant and infinite abundance. Because that's your connection. That's my connection. Let me give you an idea. There is so much money floating around in the world, it's amazing. There are millions and millions of dollars flowing through the air. I was interested this morning, and I'll share with you, I'll confess. I was thinking about $1 trillion. Our government's getting ready to spend $1.9 trillion. No comments, other than that's one, and I'm going to talk about $1 trillion. So, we have no idea how much that is. But there's going to be $1 trillion floating everywhere in just our country, USA. Just forget about the world, just us. And that's on top of everything else. Do you know what 1/100th of 1% of $1 trillion is? 1/100th of 1% of $1 trillion is $100 million. And 10% of 1/100th of 1% is $10 million. That's a drop in the bucket of the whole thing. So do you understand what we're talking about? $1.5 billion? It's like, how many markers do we need? How many books do we need? It's a drop in God's ocean. So we have this unlimited ocean of all resources, and we're restricting ourselves by fear. How are we going to borrow the money? Who's going to give us the money? God is. Now, I know that God works through us, works through people, but it's a consciousness that creates. And folks, we are planning on a building. We are planning on a building as a center of peace and harmony and love. What is the world looking for? What does the world want now? What do we all want? Harmony, peace, joy, an outlook on life that makes a difference. And we want a building that might cost us 10% of 10% of 1/100th of 1% of what the government's going to spend. Do you see how ridiculous it is to worry that that won't come up? And what else do I worry about, or what else do I hold myself back by worrying and putting the frequency into my natural self that wants to give me everything and wants to love me and take care of me? I am creating energies that are actually holding me back from my highest good. And I am canceling that idea, if you will. By the way, last week Larry shared with you, the 3 monkeys, and we translated it as see only good, hear only good, speak only good. I'm going to ask Madeline to help me. Madeline went out on Amazon and created these. Come on, put it up there. And these are Buddhas. Everybody see that? It's see only good, hear only good, speak only good. Now, here's the metaphor. Buddha is the metaphor for the Christ self, the kingdom of heaven within. Okay, and the Buddha, one of the greatest spiritual beings that existed on the face of the earth, his secret was speak only good, hear only good, speak only good, hear only good, hear only good. Okay.
Speak and see.
Okay, thank you. You see how the ego wants to trap me? I'm in the middle of all this conversation, all of a sudden, oh my God, I forgot it. It's speaking, okay? And really stop and think about this. And this is what Jesus was saying when he said, yes, yes, no, no, and anything else is from the evil one. Now, it's easy to talk about it, folks. It is easy to talk about it. The problem becomes, how do I do something about it? And here's the idea. Jesus, again, we need to take what Jesus said, because we are a Christ-centered conversation. And Jesus was the Christ manifested, and he gave us the model of how to handle these things. And he talked about the wages of sin. No, excuse me, that was Paul. But anyway, the whole idea is that the kingdom of heaven is within. And we use language that takes us out of it. Now, that language is like the garbage. And how do we change the garbage? Okay? And that was the whole idea between hell. Hell was translated from the original word Gehenna. And Gehenna was the place where the villages in Jesus' time burned the trash at night. So it was burning the trash, or getting rid of the trash. Now, I don't know about you, but in my neighborhood, we got a trash can, and we put it out every Tuesday morning. So guess what? It's a metaphor for us. Taking the garbage, and when it comes up, putting it in the garbage can, and putting it out on the step, out. So it's a matter of becoming aware of when the words sneak in. And those words, I'm going to ask Larry. Larry, can you put that slide up that shows the language? I caught him by surprise, so I hope he's got it. Here it comes. So, you see the ego-based words? Anytime I'm angry, anytime I have bitterness, hate, manipulation, complaining, criticizing, condemning, dishonesty, on and on and on and on, that's garbage, folks. That needs to be put out of your consciousness and put at the curb in the garbage can. Or burned, if you will. So it's what Jesus said, no to these. You come over here, love, joy, peace, cooperation, abundance, gratitude, appreciation, integrity. Those are words of spirit. Those are the words to work on. So here's the key. I get angry. I hate to admit it, I do it occasionally.
Very rarely.
Very rarely. But I get angry. So what do? I say, oh, garbage. Now, remember, that which you resist persists. So if you try to attack it, if you try to say, kick it out, it's going to stay because it resists. And the ego is powerful. So the first thing to do, and you ready for this, is agree with it. Gee, I'm angry. Thank you for sharing. You know what? I would prefer to be over here in love and joy. So I'm going to make that shift. And that's the conversation. And it isn't being upset at myself. It isn't feeling guilty. It isn't feeling angry that I'm angry, if you understand the craziness of that. It's just forgiving myself, becoming aware of it, and changing it, and making the choice. And I'm saying I'm no longer hating. And by the way, in the political environment, I no longer hate. I love only people that are so concerned that they're passionate about what they're doing. Just an idea. When I criticize, what am I criticizing? Basically, I understand I'm criticizing something that I have in myself that I don't like. So again, all these things, I come over here and say, you know what? Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you showing that. And I choose to be in abundance. I choose to be in gratitude. So it's a conscious choice, and it occurs, it takes time to learn to do that. We all have issues. I might have issues with my wife.
You can take the screen down.
I might have, what?
You want to take the screen down so people can see?
Oh, I'll take the screen down, Larry. We made that point. Thank you. I'm back. So everybody take a deep breath and let it out. So here's the idea. If we can put error thoughts, and they're just mistakes, they're just errors. They're things to say, no, thank you for sharing, I appreciate you pointing that out, and I want to go over here. Okay? So what we're going to do is put error thoughts in the garbage can and find the new thoughts. So what we're doing is talking about dwelling in the words that are spiritual. And it almost becomes that simple. I really am enjoying this. I appreciate Madeline purchasing these for me because they're here. I can't ignore them. I have to look at them. And I have to remember that I'm putting things in the garbage can. Now, it doesn't have to be a garbage can. You can burn it. You can mentally do anything with it. It's just letting it go. And it's saying, thank you for showing me this. Thank you for making me aware that I've been dwelling in that idea, and I'm choosing to change my consciousness into one of love, joy, and peace. And folks, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes commitment, it takes practice, and it takes the willingness. Because the ego really wants to keep us over here. The ego wants to say, nope, boy, get back over here. You need more enemies. You need something to complain about. You need something to, I was going to use the word bitch, but I shouldn't do that. Okay? But I hope I shocked you. Because that's the key. It's saying automatically, no, yes, I love you. I choose to live in the consciousness of my natural self, my higher self. And I know as I do that, I get closer and closer to returning to the Garden of Eden. That's what we're about, folks, in my opinion, with Unity Pflugerville here. We are sharing tools, meditation, affirmations, even denials, all those ideas we're sharing, and those are the tools that help us return to the Father, but it's leaving the other part of us behind and learning to dwell in the spiritual self and become the natural person that we really are. So I love you. I appreciate you. I'm really excited about where we're going. I literally see our new building. I literally see our consciousness. I literally see a light so bright that it is changing. And we talk about changing the world, but we're changing the world in consciousness. The physical world, see, when you fight and work in the physical world, you have to deal with the physical world's rules. But when you come over here and dwell in spirit, you're dealing with spiritual rules which are already biased to support you, love you, help you, and be who you really are. So it's learning to stop fighting over here and come over here and loving. I was really interested in the daily word. I'm going to finish this morning. It says, the scripture, those of steadfast mind you keep in peace. And steadfast mind means focused on the spirit within you. In peace because they trust in you. And it takes trust, it takes faith, it takes a real commitment to follow this path. And thank you for making that commitment. Thank you for being in the path. Thank you for being the consciousness that you are. And thank you for changing the world. One step at a time. I love you. I'm done. Thank you.